Grace and peace. Welcome to another episode of the TBT Show. I'm Anthony Moten. My friend and brother and partner in crime, as always, is the Right Reverend Elder Shawn P. Aguilar. We'll try it again this week. Shawn, how are you today?
You know, it just never changes.
It never changes.
It never changes. It's unbelievable. One way or the other. I don't know if you believe it or not.
This guy here. Man, thank you for joining us, and welcome again to those who've given commentary and sent in emails and responses. Thank you again, and so much. There's a couple things that we want to discuss today, and then there's a lot of other things that we have in the pipe that's coming. So please keep your eyes and ears open to all that we have coming in the weeks to come. But the first thing that we want to discuss today, I usually don't, to those that follow me on Facebook, I usually try not to say anything about anything on Facebook unless it's, I'm just, joking and playing that. I try to keep Facebook as loose as I can. But when I got the news about what had happened Sunday when I got out of church, I couldn't help but say something. And so initially, let me just give us what happened. I got out of church and have some conversation with our young people, and I do my normal, get in the car and look at my phone and see this message that's been sent to me by a friend of a video of someone going into I think it's called Leaders of Tomorrow, whatever the name of that church is. It's Bishop Lamar Miller Whitehead, and you've heard the name. We've discussed it a couple months ago. He was robbed or near robbed or frame robbed or whatever while in service. And then Sunday, some people came in, 2 women came in, and they were kind of raking him over the coals. The comments that I heard, one lady said he was lying, he was a fake prophet, et cetera, et cetera. And again, I don't uphold that, right? Because, God's house is sacred. So if people are in there, whether they're in there blind or not, they're in there, that space and time should be set apart for them to worship however they deem worship should go. And so he offers this woman an opportunity. You want to come up here and preach? Well, come up here and preach. She comes up to the front. She says some stuff. He asks his congregation to join him in praying in the Spirit, which was, and again,
being generous.
That's what he said. Hey, let's pray in the Spirit, y'all.
You're being generous.
And please, I have respect for everyone's belief, but that 10, 15 seconds was so funny to me, because he said, let's pray in the Spirit, and he just went to, my. It was so funny. But anyway, so after this, she walks away, but then she walks to the front again, and all I see is him grab her, and it looks like he just chokes her out of the screen. So we don't. So this message gets to my phone, he's been arrested. She's been taken into custody. And they both been taken to some local
booked.
Yeah. And after the fact, of course, for me at this point, anybody knows me know what my Sunday look like, right? It's church, and then my Cowboys. So whatever's going on has got to chill until after my Cowboys play. So immediately I post on Facebook, like, because I'm interested. Where was this aggression?
Right.
A couple months ago when you were being robbed.
And where was the security?
Now
you talked all this noise about how you had security and you gave him 1 day off, and this happens. But yet again,
which says
here we
you're
are,
still open to be robbed again if that's the case. Because if you're still in there, whatever. And so so after the game, I put where's the aggression? After the game, I look again, trying to catch up. Now at this point, he's been released.
Okay. Correct. Yeah.
I don't know why he had been released, and so he's on Facebook Live going in on a lot of things. And again, I'm gonna cut to the chase. He attributes him being arrested to the fact that he is a black pastor. Now, it looked like to me he choked her. I've seen the multiple
angles.
Video, right.
Yeah, there's one from like maybe 10 rows back. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, maybe not as hard as I would assumed.
When I first saw it, I don't know if you're a fan of the Dave Chappelle show.
Of course.
But I assume that you are.
Of course.
And some in the wider audience. The first thing I thought of was whenever they did this skit about Dylon. And he's talking to Wyclef, and he's like, "You're too close, man." And he starts choking him. And that's the first thing that popped in my head when I see this. And it's like, this is of your own doing. This isn't a comedy skit. But that's what happens when you're a joker and a jester.
Right.
Serving in the court of the king, as opposed to a herald.
Right.
Heralds are taken seriously.
Right.
Has nothing to do with the color of your skin.
No.
Has everything to do with the content of your character. He said that, if I was a priest or if I was a rabbi,
I heard that.
And here's the deal, is that, your religious affiliation doesn't matter. What happens is that what's the seriousness that you take yourself as a clergyman? The reason that wouldn't happen to a rabbi or a priest or anyone, any other pastor, this wouldn't happen regardless of your ethnicity, because they would not be clowning like this. But that's the difference between a clown and a clergyman.
Right. And so here's the latest. Now, my frustration was, again, this is something that our culture doesn't need to see, right? So all we see is, and again, I'm looking at the wider view of church and just, so all we see is an African-American pastor, or so-called pastor, grabs a woman by the throat.
Yep.
And so, of course, the assumption is going to be by the wider world, even outside of church. See, that's why
I don't go to church.
And so, I'm looking at this like it just looks bad, whatever. He comes back and he says, "Hey, someone, put these two people in my church. It was all set up." According to him, it was set up by Larry Reed and King Jive, who are, I don't know if you want to call them influencers or
bloggers.
Both of them have a great following.
Yeah.
That have created this
gossip,
right? But
church gossipers,
just church gossipers. But hey man, a lot of people. What's the woman? I can't think of her name. She went all the way. Had a TV show here recently, up until she fell out with the outfit on. She had the Lady Liberty. She had the whole thing on, and she passed out. What's her name? She was a radio voice for a long time, and then got a TV show because all she is a gossiper.
Oh, okay.
I'll think of it at 3:00 in the morning.
Okay.
So I mean, I don't hate that, but their beef. So the bishop's beef with them and their beef with him is personal,
right?
Because he made some personal attacks to them, and they're coming back at him like it is what it is. I don't think they had anything to do with the women coming in, but according to him, he has proof that they sent them in there. So now he's going at them. So finally, he broke out the other day that he had this bootleg press conference. This guy is hilarious.
This was not a press conference.
Right.
This was a press con.
But it's like,
There's only one person.
And his phone.
That's one person holding the mic.
And his phone.
That's it.
It's like,
right. That's not a press conference.
He gets mad. I don't know if you saw this video.
No.
He was driving home.
I think I saw part of it. It was when he had on the Cuban links.
And then the Fendi sweater.
Yeah.
So
I saw the Fendi sweater, the white
that's
sweater.
What he had on at the press conference.
That was the press conference thing.
Or press con.
Yeah, the press con.
He gets in his car and he's on his way home. He gets mad. Finally, he breaks down. They set this up. I got proof they set this up. I tell you what, Larry Reed, let's fight. Let's get in the ring.
He got 2 boxing matches.
Now, again, this is a lot of aggression from somebody we just saw 2 months ago laying prostrate on the floor, bro. So it's like, and he, again, he's the woman was going to attack my family. I had no choice but to choke her or grab her, or whatever he qualifies it as.
Because he still don't have security. He could do with one less Fendi sweater, one less Gucci suit, and have security for himself and his family that he cares so much about.
I just heard another one yesterday.
Just saying, like, if you're so rich and so wealthy, and you say it's all from legitimate sources and all this different stuff, blah blah blah, why is it that you neglect the things of greater importance?
Right.
Instead of driving a Bentley with no security, you'd be better off driving a Buick with security.
I'll tell you what, it doesn't even have to drop that low. Because you're in a Bentley, just get a Benz.
Yeah.
And security.
There you go.
And you get the ride.
Mm-hmm.
Luxury.
And get security.
And you get security.
Boom, boom.
But see, one of the women was in one of his free real estate classes. And so...
So she went up to clown him because she got scammed. But see, whenever you do wrong, you shouldn't be surprised. And 2 wrongs don't make a right.
Yeah.
Let me preface this. Yeah. 2 wrongs do not make it right. But when you do wrong, you ought not be surprised when someone comes around to wrong you.
Right. Now,
that doesn't make it right.
But
for her to come in and charge him up, especially in, as you said, should be a sacred space. Every congregant, parishioner, whatever you want to call it, attender of a worship service should feel safe and secure. That they can worship freely, however it is that they see fit. Does that make sense?
That's one of the
freedom of religion
of our country.
Right. Exactly. And so that's something that we should be able to reasonably expect in this country.
Right.
And so if there is some type of setup, whatever the case may be, Bishop, Brother, Pastor, Reverend Deacon, Dr. Whitehead. Oh, and by the way, I did not know that you could get a PhD in theology and business over the weekend because
he said he had 2 PhDs.
He said he got 2 PhDs over the weekend.
I don't know what PhD stands for.
Right, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
it's not Doctor of Philosophy.
No,
and I'm like, how'd you get? Okay, what school?
And again, I wasn't gonna go there.
Hey, that's where we are.
Because to me,
that's where we are.
Certain things translate, right?
Right.
So if you are, if you're trained or you're educated, I should be able to hear it,
right?
Because certain things translate,
right?
I don't hear PhD.
No.
Honestly, I don't hear high school diploma.
I was gonna say I don't even hear GED.
I don't hear it. So I'm not gonna
the GED section. D.L. Hughley,
which is extremely good though. Right. But I don't even know. Which is not a knock on that.
Not a knock on that. I'm just saying I don't.
I don't.
And so, but if you're this doctor of business, this doctor of theology, and you're so well coiffed, okay, then why is it that let's say everything you say is true?
Right.
Let's say they set you up. Let's say that, the whole deal that happened before was legitimate, blah, blah, blah. If that were the case, number one, why do you not have the security presence necessary so that you, as the pastor, are not having to physically restrain unruly guests in your church? Number one.
Okay. So before you go to number two, to me, it's not just security, but it's structure.
Correct.
So, like, I don't have a great security presence. I don't think I need one, but I don't have one like that. Like, we got security, but not like that. Mm-hmm. But we got men at the church.
There you go.
Nobody's gonna let me put my hands on the. You know what I'm saying?
Right. It shouldn't make it that far.
Like, she walked by two men.
Well, also that was upon his invitation.
Right.
So again, sometimes it's security, sometimes it's structure, sometimes it's just outright stupidity.
Right.
And as we've heard, you can't fix stupid.
Right.
So, but that just was not wise.
Right.
That was not wise. Why would you yield the pulpit? Because you really said that in jest, thinking that they're not going to take you up.
Right.
Yeah, thinking that they're not going to take you up. Right. Then all of a sudden, it went farther than you wanted to go. But number one, where is this security presence that you say that you need and that you had, but we haven't seen?
Right.
Number two, don't you realize that you're playing right into the hands of the blogosphere? You're handing them content on a silver platter.
Right. Right.
And exactly the type of content that these two creators, influencers like to make. Right. I mean, low-hanging fruit. I mean, you're playing right. So, I mean, from a theological standpoint, I don't see the doctorate. From a business standpoint, I don't see the doctorate. I don't see it. Nor the masters, nor the bachelors.
And then
I don't see it. Now, whether or not you have it, what kind of paper is printed on, hey, whatever.
And we have to, at some point, I think things just have to be level. And I didn't even want to spend this much time on the bishop, but things just have to be level. So, from all accounts, he lives in a
mansion,
$100 million plus home. He drives $1 million cars. Mm-hmm. He had $500,000 worth of jewelry.
Cash, cars, clothes, creature comforts, cottages in the country.
And then your church looks like that. Then you qualified, like, you're like, man, y'all don't see the audience, but we have hundreds and hundreds of members. Then they released the video from Sunday, and it's probably like 10 by count.
Yeah.
So again, like, things don't match up. Then you get mad at people that get on the internet to say things don't match up.
Right.
Like, they're only saying what everybody else is seeing.
Right.
And you could be mad at them.
Right.
Or you could just say, hey, I need to do better. And that's why everybody's not stream ready, right? Yeah. And so I'm not gonna question his call or hey, if you heard something, say go. Like, hey, I'm not gonna question that. Now I will question your preaching presentation, of which I've heard, which is horrible. But I won't question your call.
That's right.
If you said, but you're not stream ready, and then you don't get a like. People are going to. I'll tell anybody that's going into ministry, you need to have tough skin.
Yeah.
Because people are going to talk.
100%.
Like, there's some situations that the church and the pastor's in that you can't do right no matter what you do.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, if you drive too nice a car, it's like, oh, he's fleecing the flock. And if you don't drive a nice enough car,
you're
then
a bad manager of your money.
Exactly.
You feed the community.
Can't win for losing.
Right. You feed the community, or you're a social gospel. You don't feed the community, or you ain't doing no work.
Right. Right.
But you got to have enough tough skin to say, hey, look, this is the space I've been called to, and just do it without being moved by every time somebody says something.
Right.
Like, they're calling you a duck.
Right.
because you look
like a duck.
You quacking like a duck.
Mm-hmm.
So by right, you know what I'm saying. So like, and I get it. It's frustration, and now it's just words going back and forth, and so now he's hood. So now every other phrase he says is at the end of the day, and I hate it. And then it's 10 toes down, and I hate it. It's, so now you're just hood. But we just saw you laying on the floor, bro. Like,
it's classic overcompensation. So it's like, okay, I have to present myself, but it's like, hey, better a live dog than a dead lion.
Right.
You that's a scripture that you could relate to from our first encounter with you.
Right.
Is that, hey, live dog. You went ahead and say, hey,
you're right.
I'm not going to put up a fight.
Right.
Now, the people that you needed to deal with, you won't deal with, but you'll deal with people that are far away from you, that are, not any real threat. Right. And now you unleash all this anger, on that. But the threat, you let them make it.
Hughley. Now you want to fight Larry Reed. Now you want to fight, King Jive. It's like, point your aggression at what it should be pointed at. Or how about just bottle your aggression and do what you feel like you're called to do, and protect your family, and don't worry about what naysayers have to say, if that's the case.
Right.
But it's hard to do. I believe everything he's doing now is for publicity.
He's trying to maintain his presence, and this is straight out of the Donald Trump control the media narrative playbook. Stay in the news no matter what. Deny. Advance your narrative. Right. So no matter what, stay relevant, and anything that you don't agree with, deny it, and just keep moving forward. But stay in the news cycle, and that's the deal. He's just trying to stay, because every time it's like, okay, hey, we've well moved on. Oh, right. Here comes something
else. Right.
Here comes something else. But eventually, when you only got one play, the defense is pretty easy to figure you out.
Right.
Right.
I'm a go. I ain't gonna say nothing else about the good bishop, but he did say the mayor of New York was a friend of whatever, and he hasn't heard from his friend. So now he's saying that Larry Reed and everybody ran his friend off. It's just like,
man,
it's funny, man. But again,
I'm not going to challenge anybody's call, but there's a reality that some were sent and some just went.
Yeah. And you could tell by your fruit.
And I'll just leave it right there.
Right. So some were sent and some just went.
Some just went.
Yeah, well, it looks like he just went. But again, to those who are affected by, the events, he said he had members that were scared to come to church now. The robbery didn't do it, but these two women did, according to him. But, hey, listen.
So they were okay with gunshots, but the gossipers, oh, my goodness. We can't deal with some people coming up in here and being invited into the pulpit by the pastor of the church while he's supposedly preaching. Yeah, come on now.
Yeah. So, anyway.
Got to learn a different play to run, man.
Yeah. Anyway, so, again, to those who are interested at all or just like a laugh here and there, keep your eyes open to Bishop Lamar Miller Whitehead. He continues to defend himself against things that our lying eyes are telling us. So,
speaking of playing games,
right? And I think this is games at the highest.
Speaking of playing games,
yeah.
So a Texas sheriff in Bexar County is investigating Florida Governor Ron DeSantis for his involvement in migrant flights to Martha's Vineyard. So the sheriff is Sheriff Salazar. Bexar County is around San Antonio the city of San Antonio area. And they have officially opened a criminal investigation. And what is alleged is that Ron DeSantis contracted a Venezuelan migrant as a consultant contractor to find about 50 willing migrants to hop on a plane and hop on a bus, being promised that they would have some job prospects and facilities to live in, and just long-term opportunity for prosperity greater than what they were currently experiencing. And these were all immigrants that are here legally.
Right.
So they're here in the country legally. But DeSantis allegedly gets one of their own to get them together with this plan.
Right.
And that they're going to end up in Boston, and it's going to be the promised land. It's going to be flowing with milk and honey, right? Well, obviously, we know that it didn't go down that way. They ended up getting dropped off in the front yard of Vice President Kamala Harris.
Right.
Well, that was a political stunt, political game, to say the least. But in the wake of this happening, it's become apparent that exactly how they got there. Because they would have you think that, oh, these were people that were from the border.
Right.
But it turns out, the closest run-in to the border was Taco Bell in San Antonio.
Right.
Because they were nowhere near the border.
Nowhere near it.
But yeah, so we have some real consequences that are brewing for Governor Ron DeSantis.
And see, okay, so, and here's where, for me, where the plot thickens.
The plot thickens.
Because I believe DeSantis was well on his way to being the next far-right poster boy.
Oh, he's already there. He's polling ahead of Trump.
This derails all of that.
I don't think so.
What?
I don't think so.
What?
No, this just makes him look even better to the base. The base. The base is out here. Hey.
So I'm gonna tell you what he should be scared of. Then these are the phrases that scare me: criminal investigation.
Correct. That's tough.
Because it's not just that because again, in the court of law, they're going to start piling on.
Oh yeah.
Charges to make sure one or two nail, right?
Yeah.
So you lured them in, you transported them, kidnapping charges.
Right.
Or, you know what I'm saying? It just,
right.
Like, this just doesn't look good.
Trafficking.
And all of this for what?
So check this out. Florida set aside $12 million to relocate migrants from the state. This is the funny part that I don't really get, is that they're not in Florida. They're in Texas. Yeah. But what he says is that, they intended to come to Florida.
Right.
Now, mind you, they're living their lives legally in the San Antonio area, in Bexar County.
Right.
Nobody knocked on Ron DeSantis' door and said, hey, would you please get us out of here? Nobody. You contracted someone that's part of that community to gather the people up so you could deal with your political stunt. But he's spending taxpayer money to take people out of Texas and send them, a Republican-led state, and send them to Massachusetts, which is a Democrat-led state and a sanctuary area. And so with the justification of spending the money of the Florida taxpayer, they intended to come to Florida, so we'd rather just cut it off at the source.
Right. And then to add insult to injury,
Come on, man.
We're finna pull the Jedi mind trick.
Mm-hmm.
So representatives for DeSantis said in a statement earlier, immigrants have been more than willing to leave Bexar County after being abandoned, homeless, and left to fend for themselves. But these people weren't abandoned,
Right.
weren't homeless,
None of the
weren't
above.
left to fend for themselves.
None of the above.
So then the statement added, Florida gave them an opportunity to seek greener pasture in a sanctuary jurisdiction that offered greater resources to them as we expected. That's not what it... Now, again, I'm going to do this, make it look like that, or at least say it was that, and then hope you believe it.
Mm-hmm.
So y'all did all that, but they ended up at Kamala Harris's house.
Right. Just so happened. On the front lawn. Without any notice, without anything. So then now you've put them in a situation where, and then they tried to say that they deported them. No, they just helped these people find accommodations because, I'm sorry, even with the extra bedroom and the sleeper sofa, Kamala Harris can't house 50 people. You know, I mean, come on now. You knew what you were doing.
And here's when it becomes a game.
Mm-hmm.
So, and of course, they're cheerleaders. So Hannity said that the migrants had volunteered to go on flights.
Volunteered to go on flights.
And they all signed consent forms to go. Now, since when does a grown person need to sign a consent form?
Right.
That says you got some chicanery going on.
Right, exactly.
What they were provided in a package. The consent form was provided in a packet that they had a map of Martha's Vineyard and contract numbers of members of immigrants and refugee agencies, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So Hannity is, he's given that thing, but I think he leaked the consent form thing. And if there was a real consent form, it only proves that you got some foolishness going on.
Right. What do they need to consent to? They don't need to consent to get on an airplane. They don't need to consent to get on a bus.
See, and these are the kind of games.
And they're promised up to 8 months of cash assistance, employment services, and housing assistance at some point during their expulsion and relocation from Texas and Florida, but they were never expelled from Texas. You see what I'm saying? And so this is what happens when you don't have any good ideas.
Right. When you don't have any good ideas.
When you don't have any good ideas, you now have to resort to these type of theatrics.
Chicanery.
Mm-hmm.
And when you don't have any good ideas and you don't have anyone in a room that will challenge your bad ideas.
Yeah.
Somebody should have said, hey, man, we ought not do this.
Right.
This ain't going to turn out right.
Right. But again, for the base, they cheer this. The Republican base, loves this. Oh, yeah, they own the libs. And my deal is I don't see where you come out ahead in this.
You're right. You don't.
What did you accomplish?
Right. Even, let's just say, it would have gone to plan with nothing being known.
Mm-hmm.
What did you accomplish?
What did you accomplish? So you move some people around. They're now in a new place. Now, here's the thing. This is the part where it gets even more sinister. Watch this. So whenever you come into the country and you're here on visa, you're here on, these type of things, the paperwork that you fill out can determine a lot of things about how you deal with the government and how the government deals with you and things of that nature. So the people that were handling, these people, they were helping them fill out forms for immigration. Well, since they didn't know or care what their real address was, and since they hadn't made any accommodations of what their address would be in Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts, does that make sense? Mm-hmm. They just picked random addresses from all over the country. The problem is that whenever you have to have a hearing, you need to show up at the ICE office nearest to your address of record. So if you've transported these people from San Antonio, Texas, to whatever city, Florida, and then up the coast to the Boston area, but you put down in some cases that this person's address of record is in Arizona. Well, now you have, a day, 2 days, 3 days to get to Arizona to show up for a hearing. So now you're intentionally falsifying federal government documents, and you're trying to jeopardize and sabotage the visa status of these people that have immigrated into the country legally. Now, here's the other end. When any kind of tampering like that happens, those migrants become eligible for a different type of visa that grants them even more status and accommodations because someone has tried to tamper with it. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So instead of trying to sabotage them, he may have secured them in terms of their place in this country. Does that make sense?
And again, the number is so
50. I mean, what was going to accomplish? What was going to be accomplished? Now, I hope that things go well with these 50 migrants, and most likely it will because they're involved in this scandal. Right. Does that make sense? Right. So I'm pretty sure all of them are going to get rubber stamped, but they had to endure being separated from their family or from their community, and now they're 1,500 miles away
from where they thought they would end up.
Does that make sense? And so, and now they have to start over, and they don't have this 8 months of cash assistance. They don't have this employment services. They don't have the housing services. I mean, they literally just dropped these people off and they had to scramble to find, well, by the end of the evening, where are these people going to sleep? Where are they going to go? So now, instead of just saying, hey, look, for whatever reason, but they don't have a legitimate situation, which is why they couldn't do it. But let's say you just had 50 people in Texas that you just didn't have space for, which is not the case. But let's say you did. The governor of Texas called the governor of Massachusetts, hey, man, I need some help. We need to be able to move some people around because we're full, this, that, the third. We're going to send these people. They're going to be there this day, blah, 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 whatever. Cool. Governor of Massachusetts, hey, mayor of Boston, what facilities you have that can house 50 people. We need to be able to do this, that, the third, woo, 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 and we'll take care of it. And that's how you handle things the right way. Right. But you didn't want things to be handled the right way.
No, not at all.
You wanted to play games. Right. You wanted to use immigration as a political football to advance your cause.
Right.
Which is, hey, we have all, and I'm not saying that there's not problems at the border, but let's talk about something legitimate instead of playing games. And you're playing people's lives.
But see, and that's my biggest thing. So in order to protect a political position, you put people at jeopardy. Mm-hmm. Right. So you'll protect your political position, but then what about these people? These are people, flesh and blood. Like, you know what I'm saying? So
and they're trying to do things the right way. They came to the country legally. They're trying to work and provide for their families.
Yeah, see, all of this is foolishness, and it further pushes that that mindset that And again, this is from the side that's supposed to be the religious right.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, and that's part of the problem with a two-party system, and it's especially a problem for the Christian. Because you have one party that is so intimately connected to the child being born, then forgets them as soon as they come into the world. And then you have the other side that doesn't care one way or the other. But if you just so happen to show up here, then we'll try to take care of you and give you some programs, this, that, or the third. Does that make sense? So either way, you have an issue, you know? So one is all about you being born, but then you fend for yourself once you get here.
Right.
Pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, even if, as Martin Luther King said, you have no boots.
You have no boots. I don't get it. I don't get it.
You know?
I don't get it.
So I'm an equal opportunity offender because I see that, you know, both sides leave things to be desired.
Yeah.
But at least I see
missing on both sides. And so, you know, for those of us who are, you know, compassionate and, you know, people driven, you know, it's like, so where do you find yourself? Because on either side there's, you know, there's an issue. But, you know, for me, there's less of an issue on, you know, on one side than the other. I just can't see how certain personalities can defend and uphold and cheer destroying someone's life just to say, you know, hey, I told you there's an issue at the border. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I'm saying? It just makes, you know, it makes no sense. Just, you know.
Yeah. But I'm telling you, in the long run, I mean, unless he gets convicted of such things, which I think will depend heavily on what happens with Donald Trump, you know, this is going to propel him forward, you know, because Donald Trump is already.
Just think about how sick that makes our society, though.
Oh yeah, yeah. But he is ascending, you know, and we're you're watching, and before your very eyes, you're seeing Ron DeSantis increase, and Donald Trump decrease. Wow. And Donald Trump knows it, and he's upset about it. He's just trying to not let anyone else know that he's upset about it. He has had some posts and some things that he's deleted where he's tried to paint DeSantis in a bad light, not because he disagrees. You know,
you taking my shine,
right? But he's been outfoxed.
You know,
literally, he's been outfoxed by Ron DeSantis. And Ron DeSantis, the best thing he's got going for him is that he's not Donald Trump. That's the best thing about him in terms of the Republicans. Like, hey, this guy is not Donald Trump. He does not have the baggage
that
Donald Trump has, but he can still advance the same type of policies and things of that nature. And he'll be more palatable in a general election. And I'm telling you,
just as
watch
simple without the trash. That makes us so messed up.
You know, society. Yeah. But I mean, I'm telling you, this is, you know, you're looking at somebody's trying to establish themselves and position themselves for a presidential run as a Republican candidate.
Wow. Well, from political football to real football that went way beyond football.
Way outside the game.
So a game between...
Out of bounds.
Yeah, definitely out of bounds.
Out of bounds.
A game between the University of Oregon and BYU, college football game. Goals off the rails. BYU was ranked, I believe, 10, 15, somewhere in between 10 and 15. Oregon was ranked in the top 25, but a little bit lower. Wasn't expected to really beat BYU, but, you know, good game, but they handled them. And so at some point toward the game, toward the end, the fan base for University of Oregon begins to use... religious slurs And it's just to make, like, we're so filled with hate. But anyway, so religious slurs, basically, and there's no way to paint it other than to paint it. So the phrase that the fan base for Oregon used was, "F the Mormons," and there's a lot that divides us, and I hate that we're here as a country, as a society, as a culture. That, I mean, we're divided by sexual orientation. We're divided by culture. We're divided by politics. Hell, we're divided by by medical status now. You got the vaccinated versus
vaxxed and unvaxxed.
You know what I'm saying? Like there's so much that divides us, but I believe religion should not be one of those things. But we've seen multiple instances where it has been, or it is, to disgrace someone's belief is just, especially in that way.
Yeah.
Is so, after the fact, or University of Oregon's president, his staff came out, and they were shamed by it immediately, went into, apologies, whatnot, whatever. The governor of Utah got involved, said how frustrated, something like that, made him think that, that. So now they're doing a bunch of apologies, but the fact is, in my opinion, and I could be wrong, people only say what they mean. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, we're apologizing that it hurt your feelings.
Right. Don't you hate that? When someone hits you with that weak apology talking about, I'm sorry that you felt that way.
Yeah, I mean.
I'm sorry you took it that way.
Yeah.
Not sorry for the actual
Right.
act.
Right. I apologize.
The infringement. I apologize for.
I view you in that way. Or I apologize for the very thing that made me say that. But I apologize you took it the way you did.
Right.
And it just, it comes off as weak and light. And again, it's just another instance where we're divided by so much. And it's almost like nothing unites us. And so, to every student at BYU and every player on this BYU football team and anybody that heard this, of course, I'm sorry doesn't even begin to explain. But and you made me think about something too. I wonder if it wouldn't have been like, because Mormons are known to be kind of light and
meek and mild, and they get along with everybody and so on and so forth. Because here's the deal. I doubt they would do the same thing at Notre Dame.
Oh, no.
And say the same thing to those that express themselves in the Catholic tradition.
Right. No.
I'm not aware of a Division I Muslim university in America.
But if there was one, I bet they wouldn't try it. Yeah.
I bet that they would not try it.
Yeah. I can't see them saying anything.
And this isn't the first time this has happened.
Right.
This is the first time it's happened in Oregon. This also happened at a game at USC.
Really?
Yes.
And I wonder, is it because like, who would say that? Okay, could you see somebody saying that at Baylor?
No.
Or to Baylor? Like, I just like.
I mean, and there's a most of the older colleges and universities were founded by the church.
Right.
You know, and so they've gone away from their founding principles, but that's, what they were founded on. But because Mormons are viewed by many as more of a cult, there's not really,
Really, you think still?
Oh yeah.
You had a Mormon nominee for president.
That doesn't mean that what they believe is correct.
No, I'm just saying.
That just means that particular individual has that faith.
So we view him as okay, because maybe this is me, because I don't view a cult as a faith. So do you think the world views it as a cult still?
Well, they're identified by several, mainline Protestant leaders, denominations that's a cult. They believe heresy. Let's just call it what it is.
Right.
That's a cult.
And I don't agree with what you believe in, but
right.
I do agree with your right to believe in what it
Correct.
is you believe in.
Right. That's what I'm saying is that, but again, if the coaches are looking up to the Donald Trumps and the Ron DeSantises,
then this is what.
Does that make sense?
Right. And this is what
if
happens.
the coaches and the professors, so now you have the kids that are living in an American society that is contentious, that is aggressive, ties back again to, Mr. Brother Pastor Whitehead, Bishop, aggression. Does that make sense? The problem in America that we have is that we have a problem with otherness. Yeah. If you are other than me and my tribe, then you are evil and you must be destroyed.
Right.
Because you are other. Right. You're politically other.
Right.
You're religiously other. You're culturally, economically other. You're culturally other.
Right.
So that whole, deal in terms of, religious tolerance that we're supposed to be, that we're supposed to have in this country, now in a contentious political environment, if you are other, you are not one of us, then you're evil.
Right.
And you're to be destroyed.
And see, that's what I don't, one of the biggest things that I just don't like. So, because again, sometimes other can help us be a better version of ourselves.
Yeah. We can be better together.
Right.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that you have to conform me into whatever.
Right.
It only means it allows me to view things from a different vantage point.
Correct.
And and I may not understand. I may not agree with you or understand.
Correct.
But I at least understand why you view it.
Right.
The way you
why you are the way you are. Why you view the world the way you do.
Right.
And how can we, exist in a civil society?
Right.
That doesn't mean that, okay, well, just because you tolerate that you accept in the sense of that you have to adopt that other person's or party's viewpoints, but that you at least have the civility to hear them out and come to an arrangement on how we live together.
Right. Because, just because we don't agree on everything doesn't mean we won't agree on some things.
Correct.
One of my favorite authors is, and you would have to know like my whole mindset. So one of the things that, and you've been around some Church of Christ, and again, there's extremists and and everything. So and I know of some friends or whatnot, associates that are Church of Christ, and they're like, hey, all y'all are going to hell. 'Cause if
Oh,
you're
yeah.
not part of the Church of Christ, you're going to hell.
Right.
So, and I was just opposed to that, that whole kind of, mindset, whatever. One of my favorite authors is Max Lucado.
Mm-hmm.
So I just found out here recently, maybe over the course of the last 4 or 5 years, Max Lucado is Church of Christ.
Really?
See? See? But it was like, in reading his stuff, I'm like, that doesn't come across. And there are some things that we disagree on.
Mm-hmm.
But the things that we agree on is like, not only do we agree, he's a major voice for it.
Right.
So, and again, we can do ourselves a disservice by shutting people off because they're not just like us.
Right.
Or you can say, okay, it's almost like Big Mama, with, eating fish. She say, baby,
chew up the meat, spit out the bones. Yeah.
Just because it doesn't fit doesn't mean it's not, but just whatever you.
Because there's several, people that I have an appreciation for that are of different faiths altogether, or they're of a different denomination.
Right.
Right. There are some authors that I really appreciate their work. They're Presbyterian.
Right.
They're Reformed.
Right.
They may not even be in a Christian tradition, maybe a completely different faith, or they may have some people will say they're atheists. I would say more, they're either humanist, materialist, or naturalist. They don't have faith in the supernatural. They only have confidence in the natural. Right. But they can still have contributions that can enrich
absolutely
our lives.
Absolutely.
Does that make sense?
You end up missing out on something good just because it doesn't come in the box
because of
you want it to come in.
Oh, allergy to otherness.
Right. Right.
And so that doesn't mean I need to compromise my convictions.
Right.
In order to hear that person out, because at the end of the day, this is still another person, another citizen, a neighbor, and we got to figure out how to live together.
Yeah, absolutely.
But when you have children that are growing up, and these are children, I don't care how tall they are, how much they weigh, how much they can bench press, none of that different stuff. Right. Doesn't matter. They're children.
Right.
They're young adults. But there's a reason that we call them young adults.
Right.
The adult brain is not even fully formed until 25.
Wow.
It's not fully formed yet. Right. That's why there's, there is a basis for why you have to be 25 years old to be a congressman or congresswoman. Right. You have to be 35 years old to be the president of the United States.
Right. And then, and although it, the mind might not be fully formed to 25, it's at this point, it's like, who's forming it?
Well, and that's what I'm saying, but it's the prefrontal cortex. It's the decision-making part of the brain is not fully matured until the age of 25. Right. The decision-making area of your brain. So, and they're being influenced in that, and I'm using this term scientifically, in their immature state.
Right.
They're not fully mature. So in their immature state, they're being influenced by their professors, by their coaches, by their parents, who are all looking up to whom?
Right.
So why should we be surprised?
Right.
That this is the type of stuff that can and will happen.
Right.
And this is just a football game.
Just a football game. Right. And then in the bigger scheme of
So what happens when
life,
happens when it comes down to them and somebody that is that displays otherness from them, and it comes down to a business deal?
Right.
Who's going to get a promotion?
Right.
Who's going to win a political campaign?
Right.
What happens when
Or
they actually start doing, or something simple. When you get cut off,
right,
at you see what I'm saying, at an intersection,
right,
or on the highway.
Both of y'all are coming to the counter at the same time,
right?
Is it you back up and say, "Oh no, you go first"?
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, you got on a BYU shirt,
right?
So,
or you have on a turban,
right,
or and so you automatically start making judgments and decisions about this person based on one piece of information. Right. And that one piece of information may not even be accurate. Because and this happens a lot with the Sikh community, SIKH. They get mistaken because they wear a turban. They get mistaken as someone that's Iranian or Iraqi, and they've been subject to violence because as a result of a case of mistaken identity. Someone that they're not. Yeah. But just because they have something similar, but they don't have the same beliefs, they're not from the same part of the world.
Right.
You know, right. They're not Muslim.
Right. And then for us, like, even if they were, like, you gotta.
And that's not to warrant that. But what I'm saying is that
you
think you know.
Right. When you really don't.
And you really don't.
Even if they were.
In the words of Jim Mora.
Yep.
You remember he used to coach?
Right.
You think you know, but you really don't know, and you never will. You know? And so, and that's the thing. So it's like, without really figuring out who is this person as a person.
Right.
And how do we get along? You know? Right. And so, to me, it's just a projection.
Right.
It's just a microcosm of what's going on the grander stage.
And let me say this, and we're moving on. Mm-hmm. If you're at a sporting event, gathering of any kind, mm-hmm. Don't cheer hate.
Yeah, this makes no sense.
I just don't cheer hate, and I've been a big proponent of that. Like, I don't never, I've been both. Tay and Evan played, mm-hmm. High school athletics, mm-hmm. whatever. And you hear some of the craziest things out of people's mouth. Man, that's somebody's child.
Right. And this happened. And we covered, the Little League football situation. Somebody got shot. Yeah. Lost their life.
Over there. Nice.
And then the other person is probably going to basically lose their life in terms of incarceration. And so it doesn't make any sense. But I was taught something. I'm pretty sure that you and your sons were taught this. Is sportsmanship.
Right.
If you're playing football, when you score a touchdown, hey, you want to have a little celebration, so on and so forth. That's fine. Or the way I was taught, hand the ball to the ref.
Yeah.
And go sit down. I mean, be happy. I'm not saying don't
act like you've been there before.
Act like you've been there before. I mean, it's like, hey, somebody falls down, help them up. Right. The play's over, help them up. Even if they're on the other team.
Right.
Sportsmanship.
Right. And you can you can be a great sportsman and still be competitive. You can't. It's not that you can't. Do both. It's either or. No, it could be both and. You can do both.
Right.
But we just live in a society where we cheer hate. Mm-hmm. And then when
just play a hater's ball.
Yeah.
Hate. And
then I can't stand it. I can't stand it. Yeah, that'll make me get up and move quicker than anything else.
Yeah.
Is that. No, that's a kid. It's somebody's kid. Mm-hmm. He's not a bum or whatever else you want to,
Right. Whatever you want to call him. Right.
Whatever that, and again, I'm from Northeast Houston, so I'm gonna say something, mm-hmm. and that the saying something is
the warning.
That's the warning, because the next is gonna be doing something.
Right.
Like that's a kid, and again, if you're comfortable doing that, then that means you're comfortable in a whole lot of other things. Mm-hmm. I just don't want that kind of negativity mm-hmm. anywhere around me. So again,
just a poor reflection.
Yeah,
poor reflection.
And so who we are as a culture, as a community. Mm-hmm. is seen at moments like this.
Right.
If you're okay with somebody saying that near you, mm-hmm. then that means, you may not feel similar.
Right.
But you don't feel opposite enough to stop it. We don't cheer hate.
Right.
So.
Right.
So another thing that's up in the news, and this is, I don't even know that this is. Does anybody even still listen to Dr. Phil?
I mean, I think that this is newsworthy just because of how badly he was embarrassed on his own show. That's what makes this newsworthy. But I don't think people really take Dr. Phil seriously, especially he's, his doctorate, is in psychology. He's not a biologist,
Not only is his doctorate in psychology, it has not been renewed.
Well, that's his license.
His license hasn't been renewed since 2006.
Correct, yeah. Because he's not a clinician.
Not working, right.
Yeah, he's not actually taking clients.
You got
once he got. Once you got TV shows and Oprah's put you on, what do you need to take counseling sessions for?
So if your license isn't good, should the show still be called Dr. Phil?
Well, yeah, because the doctorate is not based on the license; it's based on the degree. The degree never changes. The license. Okay. You see what I'm saying? So it's kind of like,
okay.
Does that make sense?
Okay. So
maybe that's something that should have to happen. Renewing degrees.
I mean,
to ensure competence.
Right. So he was embarrassed on his own show, and I don't even think, and a lot of and again he's been in jams before where he'll be going one direction, somebody will say something. It's like Dr. Phil doesn't even know really.
Well, here's the thing. Everything that he talked about, which was basically nothing, but what he did try to assert could all be found in the very first Google search.
You and your small startup company, Google.
The small startup company, check them out, Google, Google. And so everything that he said you could find in the very first, if you just type in, when does life begin? The first article, that's all his talking points.
See, he said it, like he agreed, and then he started arguing with himself.
Right, he started, but he didn't, that's the sad part, is he did not realize he was making the pro-life point.
Until after he said it.
Then tried to walk it back.
Right. And again, hey, listen, okay, so here's what happens. Sean's going to give us the details. Here's what happens. Dr. Phil he's on his show, and the point that he highlights is, the woman that he had on here, I can't even find her.
Leela Rose. She's the pro-life advocate, right. which they had a panel of both sides, of pro-life and pro-choice, and this was in response to the overturning of Roe versus Wade.
And here's my frustration with Dr. Phil, and it's obvious he's pro-choice, and that's fine. I mean,
I'm not sure if he even knows.
Oh, which one he is?
He was taking, because what he was saying, you had pro-life over here, and you had pro-choice over here, and you had Dr. Phil in the middle saying, how can we know? I mean, nobody knows. So he's trying to straddle the fence,
right.
And so he's just trying to say, well, no, it's not conclusive. And it's like, are you serious?
But see, he said 96% of scientists say that life begins at fertilization.
Correct.
And then he starts talking about how that couldn't be true because.
That's what Leela Rose said.
So did she say that?
She said that. Yeah. What he said, it says McGraw, who holds a doctorate in clinical psychology but has not renewed his license to practice since 2006, claimed there is no agreement in the scientific community regarding when life begins. So he's not saying one way or the other. He's just saying we don't know.
And she said 96, which I think everyone agrees.
Right. 96, and she states a fact. There is Dr. Phil, meaning there is agreement in the scientific community. 96% of scientists say life begins at fertilization. Rose, the 34-year-old founder and president of Live Action, said if you're an in vitro specialist, you're looking to create a single-cell embryo, and then you have a new human life. So it is a scientific fact.
Right. See, and I think they were arguing about at the time, using abortion as an option in the case of the baby's going to be ill, have some, sickness,
birth defect or something,
right? Whatever. Okay. So it's a scientific fact. Life begins at fertilization. If you're pro-choice, like, how does that change your stance at all?
They don't care. But
if you're pro-life, it doesn't. It's just like.
But here's the difference, and this is what kind of, I think, where Dr. Phil didn't want to get in hot water
with either side.
With either side.
Okay.
But what the problem is, and maybe what I'm thinking he might have been referring to, but this kind of makes him lean to a pro-choice position, is they differentiate between life and personhood. Does that make sense?
And who doesn't?
So, well, some people will say that it's if they're extreme on the pro-choice side, they'll say that it's not a baby, and that's when they try to use the scientific terms. If you ever hear two people in a debate and one person says baby and the other person says zygote, gamete, something like that, when they start using scientific terms, is because they're trying to not confer that this is a human life. And then if you press them when faced with the statistics that, hey, look, there was not life, and then there was fertilization, and there was life. Very simply.
Right. But I mean, even after fertilization, and if
but then they'll say that new life is not a person yet,
because there's a lot that still needs to go on as far. And I get it, but I don't think we would disagree. That's almost like saying we would disagree when fertilization is
right.
When
it's clear
when egg hits sperm, or
right
when a heart is created, when lungs are created. I don't think that changes. Again.
Well, as a proponent of the pro-life position, life begins at fertilization. It is a scientific fact. She is correct.
I mean, okay. So, as a proponent of pro-choice, that may be where life begins, but there's a lot in between that. Look, my heart bleeds for a family that has to decide this option for a baby that's going to have.
But let's take it away from the extremes. The problem is that less than 1% of abortions, and there's millions of abortions performed globally every year. Let's stay away from the tiny cases of rape, incest, and birth defect.
Why stay away from them? I mean,
because those are things that are such a small percentage and gray area. When you're coming to the real meat and potatoes of the pro-life versus pro-choice stance, is the overwhelming 99.9% of abortions are not because of rape, not because of incest, and not because of birth defect.
Now,
the overwhelming reason is convenience.
Well, it would be convenience even in that. Okay, it
would be convenience even in that. But what I'm saying is that barring those things,
we don't necessarily know, right? Because like we know, a lot of cases of rape aren't ever, reported.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be, and I'm not either way. The person that has to submit its body to fulfill the term and push out a baby, and has to take care of this baby for whatever. I don't think pro-choice is not necessarily I support abortion. I support your right to choose what you're going to do with your body and over the course of the next.
But here's the deal, is that's based on the past 50 years, and it no longer is anymore. So it's no longer the law of the land. It wasn't the law of the land anywhere in the world for thousands of years. So we have this very tiny blip in world history where in one country you had the legal right to kill a baby. But currently, and for thousands of years of history prior to that, you had no such right.
And
so how how is it that in this tiny blip in history, 50 years out of 5,000, does that make sense? How is it all of a sudden that now there's this right to abortion?
There was a lot of things that were going on prior to that probably weren't going on as much during that 50 years. And again,
But no one was running around saying that they had a right to kill a baby. They just killed a baby and lived with it. And they didn't say that it was their right to do it. They didn't say it was right, and they didn't say that it was their right. Does that make sense?
Right.
That's the difference between, those that lived prior to Roe v. Wade and those that experienced abortions during that time period where it was legal. Does that make sense? Is that now you have people saying from the pro-choice position that it's right and a right for someone to get an abortion. And I say that I disagree with both counts. It is not right, nor is it a right.
I mean, it's your body. So what would be the greatest? What would be more advantageous, right? Because again, we've already pressed our system. And I don't have the numbers, but we can get them. Mm-hmm. That most children that go into a state system of adoption don't get adopted. Most children end up living in foster homes where they are open to abuse and other stuff. Again, I get it,
but that's a sociological argument.
So
this is a biological fact.
And I'm not arguing. And
that just means that, hey, you know what? We need to have, better structures, both in church and government to handle that issue. But that's something after the fact for those that are blessed enough to even be born. So that's way down the field.
So
at the line of scrimmage. The line of scrimmage is this issue, and it being right and having a right.
So it's not a right
to kill a baby,
and I think we both agreed that it's not right. But you're not having it right means that you have it. We're telling you what to do with your body. Mm-hmm. You have it, and then put that baby into the system. Where they're already a bunch.
Well, no, because you're making several assumptions. Does that make sense?
Because you're making them do something.
No, I'm not making them do anything. They're doing what they want to do because no. They're doing what they want to do before we ever get to the part of pregnancy.
Oh, okay. Just like that's way down the line. That's way now you're talking about.
But here's the deal. Most of the time, who's having abortions? The overwhelming majority.
You would be surprised. White teens.
Correct.
So what are we talking about again?
But what I'm saying is that it's people that carried before they married. Or, actually, and this is another thing that people don't always realize, is that a significant amount of abortions are done for married women that have cheated on their spouses and cannot afford to go through the embarrassment. Does that make sense? So I'm not looking at this from a racial perspective. I'm not looking at this.
I think it is, but okay, go ahead.
No, I mean, it is. But the racial perspective that I would bring into it is Planned Parenthood that is committing genocide on the unborn, mainly in black and brown neighborhoods. That was founded by...
I think pro-life is, but again,
that was founded by Margaret Sanger, right, who is a racist.
I just think, So I think pro-life is a scheme, a political scheme, to keep the majority. Just think about it.
No, because you just said
Okay.
that it kind of defeat. That's
Okay.
a snake eating its own tail, because you're saying that most.
Keep going. You're almost there.
Well, what I'm saying is you're saying that most abortions come from white women.
They keep having them because at this rate, soon black and brown communities.
Well, there's an unofficial survey that's out right now that says Texas, the majority in Texas, is now Latino. They just hit 40%. It's not the official survey, but there is a calculation that has been done that says the state of Texas, the majority ethnicity in the state of Texas right now is Latino.
Okay.
And no, I don't say Latinx.
Oh,
It's Latino
okay.
or Latina. That's what we got.
Okay. So, what ethnicity do you think is having the most children?
Latino. And they're not getting abortions. You see what I'm saying?
So we keep going at this rate. Soon, the people from the mountain of Caucasus will be the minority.
Well, understand they always have been in a global minority. It's only in the United States of America where they were the majority. If you look at the globe, the problem is we get lost in the microcosm of America. But when you look globally, there's more people that are some shade of black or brown. Does that make sense?
Right. But I mean, when we're talking about pro-life, pro-choice, it's exclusive to just America. So that is I think that is the impetus behind this big push, because
we're talking about American law, so we're
right. I don't think, and I could be wrong, I don't think as a country we care whether or not black or brown folk get abortions. We don't care.
I mean, we should.
But we should, but we don't.
But the problem is that I think that those that are in black and brown communities have fallen for the rhetoric of Planned Parenthood, and has been socially engineered that we don't care about that on a wide degree. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get it, and again, I see it from both perspectives,
because again, it's convenience.
It's convenience, but it's like I've seen families struggle and sputter for years because of the birth of a child that was not expected, and
were they married?
In most of our communities, if it comes down to a family deciding on an abortion, most of the times they're nowhere near married, and most of the times it's a teen who can't take care of themselves.
Who probably grew up in what?
A community. Well, that's why we see it,
a single parent household
who can't take care of themselves. So now you put more burden,
it's a vicious cycle,
on that mother who's now going to be a grandmother to take care of that child and a grandchild, making $17,000 a year. I get it, and that's why for me, and I understand, and that's why I say I got these two sides that fight. My Christological self says, hey, it's life. But my social self, I see the communities that I see it. And I know what it'll do to a family. And then I know what kind of help they're going to get from the powers that be in the system.
I get that.
You're going to get
but lay the axe at the root of the tree. If you had more people that were not just nominally Christian, does that make sense? But actually believed what the Bible said, did what the Bible said. The Bible gives really good advice, just from a practical standpoint.
Right.
Because the statistics are in order to raise the happiest, healthiest children, a two-parent environment is the best environment.
Right.
So if you marry, before you carry, you have a lot better outcome for the children. I get it. But what I'm saying is that is the goal that we should be reaching for, not depending upon the government. Does that make sense?
Right.
If we had men that were men
And see,
women that were women, and we got men and women together in happy, healthy marriages, and they stayed together.
That's another if.
You see what I'm saying?
If, in the words of my grandmother, if ifs and buts was candy and nuts. I mean, right. I get it.
I get all that.
Even if you marry before you carry, there's no guarantee you still won't end up being
correct. But that it doesn't make it right.
It doesn't
to kill a baby just because there might be some negative consequences after birth.
Yeah, and I don't think that's ever.
But that's kind of where you're going. But if you're saying, oh, well, hey, we got a government system that doesn't support these children. We got family structures that are inadequate, and we have church structures that can't support. We got all these sociological, governmental problems.
Failures.
Does that make sense? Failures.
So if a young woman decides that should be the choice of her and her family, because again, when you're talking about raising kids and you got a 14-year-old who's already raising themselves because the mom is working 2 jobs and both of those jobs don't equal.
2 wrongs don't make it right.
It doesn't.
2 wrongs.
But when you're talking about
and my heart goes out to those that find themselves in that situation, and we need to do a better job in terms of government and in terms of the church to provide resources for people that find themselves in that situation. However, that does not give someone the right to kill another human being that is an image bearer of the Lord God.
Oh, okay. Okay. We're going to move, but I'm going to say this. We're going to move, but I'm going to say this. Mm-hmm. Some things for some families is really, and again, I'm not saying this is never an optimal situation, but some things for some families is out of necessity. And again,
so you're saying that out of necessity.
Okay, so I'm gonna paint this picture for you.
Okay, out of necessity, they had to go out and have premarital sex unprotected.
But see now, okay.
But they had a choice then, but we don't worry about the choice to lay down. Double in a single bed. We don't have that. We don't ever talk about that choice.
I mean, okay.
We talk about the choice later on when it comes to, slaughtering the unborn.
Okay. So they misstepped on that. Mm-hmm. Now you got, so now for my family, it's either add and tax and we'll never catch up. We already, and again, and it's going to sound extreme, but a lot of families live in this reality where you got to decide between food and medicine sometimes. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying?
No, I mean, I'm not
adding another need of food.
I can't remember which comedian said this, but there was a comedian that gave this critique and said, "Hey, look, if you're broke, now you and the baby broke." You see what I'm saying? It's like, okay, and you actually get access to more resources now because you have a child. You get tax breaks. You get access to other government programs. I'm not saying that as an incentive to do it, but what I'm saying is that having the child
on 17. There's some people making 17. Say it's 25.
I get all that.
Tax breaks.
I get all that. But here's what I'm saying though: is that same person also decided to lay down double in a single bed. Does that make sense? And why is it that we're all about choice at the end, but not choice at the beginning?
I mean, out of necessity, I get it.
Because I want to hear the argument of the necessity for premarital sex without protection.
I mean, no, I'm saying, but okay, so that's done. Say that's done. It's a mistake. Mm-hmm. That's done. So
right, and now it's done. That there's another human being.
Okay.
And when you say a woman's body, well, what if there's a daughter in that woman's body? What about that young woman that is developing inside of her mother's belly? So where is her choice?
See, it's funny and
where is the choice? Where's the choice of the child? Well, we don't know because they got killed.
Okay, so it's funny, as a country we'll say abortion is murder and wrong. but then will justify murder in other veins.
Like?
Nobody goes to war trying to shake anybody's hand.
Correct.
Okay, man makes a mistake, kills somebody, he goes to jail. There's still states that believe in capital punishment. That's capital punishment is not murder.
It's not murder. So it doesn't the
Wait.
it's not murder. You see what I'm saying? Murder is different than someone. There's a difference between someone that is killed in war, someone that's killed by the government, and someone that's murdered. That's why we have a different word called murder.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
So it's the same function, but a different word.
What it is. I mean, that's what the Bible says.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is that
you come home one Friday night. Somebody's broken into your house. They have a weapon. My sister's in the house by herself. You pull your strap. Somebody in your house with a weapon. That wouldn't be out of necessity.
I'm not saying that wouldn't be out of necessity.
I'm just saying, nobody wants to be in that place. We can agree, nobody wants to be in that place.
Correct.
But I understand.
No, I get that.
I understand. Like I've seen some bad situations.
No, I get it, but it's to me it's a different thing if someone breaks in my house and I'm defending life and property and I kill that person.
Right.
I didn't murder them. I was defending. Does that make sense? Now, if say for instance you have a boyfriend or girlfriend cheats on him and he goes in cold blood and kills somebody, that's murder.
Okay.
There's two different things. That's why legally you have different charges for different situations. You have manslaughter.
What would you call abortion murder?
I never said murder.
Oh, okay.
I said killing babies.
Oh, okay.
I mean, roll back the tape.
Okay. I mean, maybe I missed it. I heard the word murder. Okay.
You said murder.
Okay. I'm just saying.
I said murder. I said slaughter. These are all terms.
Yeah. Oh, maybe that's what it was.
Yeah.
Slaughter. Like.
Yeah. Because again, if you look at legal terms, manslaughter is different
from murder.
Right. From murder one. These are different charges.
Hey, I watched First 48 too.
Right? Law and Order, baby. Don't. You know?
I get it. I'm just saying. I get it. I understand.
Right.
I know of some parents that trying to raise a child, just because this 14-year-old has premarital sex, and of which she shouldn't.
Correct.
But she did because she has all this loose time. Because the parents trying to hold down all these piece of jobs, and hopefully tape them together and make one good, income. She gets pregnant. I mean, I get it. Nobody wants to be there, but I get it. But bottom line, as it relates to Dr. Phil,
back in the day, though, there was no abortion.
There wasn't, but there was a bunch of
adoptions. She
got
sent, or it's like, hey, go see your cousin 3 states over, and grow up there. Does that make sense? Blah blah blah. It does.
But now, when you call a cousin, it's tight everywhere.
Right.
So now you leave a baby at the fire station, of which we heard about a lot in the 60s, 70s, And so now the system, and you're talking about a system that's already been.
I'm not saying this. I'm not saying it's easy.
It's not.
This is a hard. This is a hard saying.
Yeah.
And I don't, but the thing is that I have to go with what the Bible says, regardless of how all the surrounding issues. Does that make sense? All the shortcomings of the fallen world. I get all those things. My heart goes out to people in those situations, and it's not because of my lack of empathy or compassion or understanding of the situation. But it's just very simply what the delivered text has told us about the sanctity of life. It's just very simple.
Yeah. Bad spot for, family B, and I understand. Either way
But in regards to Dr. Phil, let not whatever it is that your argument is, let it not be found in only the first article of Google.
Right. And again, facts are facts, and I don't think for most thinking rational adults, facts are facts, and it still won't change your position in a lot of lights. Okay, 96% of scientists believe, life starts at fertilization. Okay, If that's the fact, that's the fact, and it still shouldn't change your position if your position is, is.
Problem is he doesn't have a position. He has a position of I don't want to lose any sponsors. That's his position.
The problem is Dr. Phil has been not knowing what he's talking about for a very long time.
That's the other side of the coin. That's the other side of the coin.
Somebody listen to Dr. Phil,
right? But no, it has nothing to do with really Dr. Phil himself. It had to do with a national television host was embarrassed, and he's supposed to be on his own show, and he's supposed to be in the profession related to the argument set forth.
Right.
And you got embarrassed on your home court.
Yeah.
I
get it. But so this last one, I want to touch it. We probably need to do a whole show.
We can.
Just this.
We can.
So,
because there's definitely enough.
So many different layers of this.
So many different layers, man.
Okay, so we'll throw it out. You know what? Okay, we'll throw it out, and we talk about something. I want to pitch something at you.
Okay. Go ahead.
So, to anyone who's heard about the movie Woman King, that it's supposed to be a story, a depiction of this real historical moment. Right. And they've taken a lot of liberties.
Lots of liberties.
With the recreation of this
Lots
historical
of liberties.
moment. So, again, there's a lot of layers. One, I think they took liberties as it relates to pushing that, that woman... Because that's just that's the culture we live in.
It's a feminist fabrication. It is what it is. Let's just
It's a feminist fabrication.
It's a feminist fabrication.
Yeah. So they took that liberty.
Yeah.
And then, like the underline is like this. The tribe didn't.
This was revisionist history.
It was revisionist history, and I thought about just reading about it. I thought about the CRT. It's white America trying to rewrite what is Black history, good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
So the portrait of this movie is not accurate, and I'll ask anybody that if you go see this movie, please.
This is fantasy,
right? Please do your own research about what really happened.
Do not think that you're getting a, realistic adaptation from the tomes of history recorded by, ancient historians. That is not the case here
at all.
This is all Hollywood and almost no history.
Dang. So we're gonna go in depth, but then even. I want to touch on it. So and I'll reach out because he's the movie buff. So maybe next week if he can, I'll see if my buddy Alex Hicks can come highlight it about it. Even the woman, what's her name, Dana Stevens,
the writer.
One, why would you need a writer for a historical presentation? You ain't got to write history, but okay,
right? It's already written. That's kind of the point.
But then, and I'm like reading about her, and was super shocked when her picture popped up.
Oh yeah, why were you shocked?
Because her culture is not. So basically, there's a white woman who writes the movie of this African tribe, and
why were you surprised?
Because
were you surprised that Hollywood had a white woman write a black film?
That's my issue. Okay, we'll talk about it in depth. I don't. Yeah. that's my, and I get it. From the Hollywood perspective.
I got problems with this film, and I did see the film. Does that make sense?
Okay.
And I'm not saying this from like when we did the piece on Honk for Jesus and we saw trailers and we're, just kind of, giving our perspective based on, the perception of what it might be, I have already seen this film. And after having seen it, and again, like you said, we'll go in more depth because the hour is far spent. But the director is she's at least multiracial.
Okay.
But she was raised in California by white parents. Middle class life, so on and so forth. Far removed from this film. The screenwriter that wove this tale.
And she was a master weaver.
Yeah, spun this tale. She borrows from history certain people that were from different times, different places, uses their name because that's the identity that she wants to project. But she takes people that sometimes are 100 years apart. One wasn't even born before the other one died. Does that make sense? And takes these characters and puts them into place.
Goulash.
And tries to paint a historically pro-slavery African tribe that's a verifiable historical fact. Not only did they participate in the transatlantic slave trade, but they wanted to continue even after the British government was like, hey, look, we can't do it no more, man. We can't. White people came to this tribe and said, look, we can't do the slavery thing anymore. And this tribe in 1840 was like, what do you mean? I mean, we still got inventory to move. Come on, man, I'll give you 2 for 1.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Right.
This is who we're dealing with. Dr. Umar Johnson would be appalled.
Yes.
Would be appalled. Because I know the word he would use to describe.
Oh, yeah. I know it, too.
I know that he would describe this culture.
Yeah. Yeah.
But this is... Exactly. King Coon. King Coon. This right here is when I say fantastic, I'm emphasizing the fantasy, not in the quality. Yeah. When I say fantastic, the fantasy-ness. Does that make sense? This is a fantastic tale.
Wow.
That is being told from the feminist vantage point that is not rooted in history at all. And it's revising history to support the narrative of today. This is the feminist production of Black Panther 1.5. Wow. It is the Flintstones to the Jetsons of Black Panther. They reached forward into the future and brought Wakanda back into the past because the Dora Milaje is based on the what the Europeans called the Dahomey Amazons. The Agoji is what they were actually, called. But yeah, man, this is taking pieces of history, twisting them out of context in order to support a current feminist narrative.
See, here's why it's so disrespectful to me. Because if you want to write a movie, write a movie.
Right. Just write a movie. Write a movie about an ancient, African culture that had this. But they're trying to present this as history.
And it is not.
And it is not. But the thing is that if you watch the movie, you'll see beautiful African scenery. You'll see great cinematography. And my issue is not with the quality of the cinematography, but it's with the lack of historical accuracy when you're trying to present it in that light. We know it's not a documentary, but you're trying to present it as this is somewhat closely following actual historical
Right.
events. That's how you're trying to present it. And you're literally taking a pro-slavery tribe that sold surrounding area,
Sold their
Africans,
brothers and sisters
their brothers and sisters,
into slavery.
into the transatlantic slave trade, to the Portuguese, to the French. Does that make sense? And you're absolutely right. There's so many layers of wretchedness in this film, but you'll be if you just go in and watch the movie, you'll be distracted by the polish of this cinematic vision.
No, they took a pig and cleaned it up. I would love for somebody, even at this point, to redo it and tell the real story.
But then if they told the real story, we'd have a bunch of problems because that doesn't fit the current narrative of what's trying to be pushed forth.
Did you know anything about this before the movie?
Very little.
I knew nothing.
Very little.
This movie made me go read into it, and I was like, what?
Very little. I was aware because I did do some research in terms of African participation in the Atlantic slave trade. So I did have some,
right?
But really, it was just the knowledge of that tribe that they had existed. Wow. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But when you look further into the kings, what their stances were, that they even had other options. They had the ability to produce palm oil and different things that they could have built their society around. And also another thing.
This was easy money.
Oh, yeah. And also, they try to present this all-female warrior unit as like it's the whole military. It was the King's Guard.
Right.
It was the King's Guard. It was at never any point more than 1/3 of their entire military force.
Right.
And it was only the result. Its institution was only the result of casualties of the males.
Right.
Because they got beat so bad.
Right.
They lost. They lost wars. And so it was out of necessity. And it started as the King Guard. But you would think that this was ancient special forces, a bunch of Xena warrior princesses roaming around the African land.
And it was not.
It was not the way that they're portrayed. But it is a historical fact that they did have this all-female fighting force, and they were fierce and they were brave, but it wasn't the way.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not 300.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
34.
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, what I'm saying is that it's not now 300. That actually happened.
Right. No. Yes.
Like if you look at the movie 300, that actually happened, and very close to the way it was portrayed. It happened like that.
It wasn't pushing
but it wasn't pushing a narrative
agenda either.
Correct. It wasn't pushing a cultural agenda. It was just, hey, how do we make history come alive in an interesting way, cinematically? Right. Does that make sense? Right. And that's what happens when you start from that vantage point. Let's take history and let's present it in a modern fashion, but we preserve the actual history.
Right.
This is, hey, let's mix and match. Let's take an idea
and go find some history and rebuild
that
it
vaguely
and let it support. Right.
But there's so many layers. You're absolutely right. Next week, and then he's the movie guy, so I'll because I definitely got some things for you that in terms of the hero's journey of how they use that template in this movie, referring to the hero's journey of Joseph Campbell. So
and that'll give me some time to go see the movie. You one step on. I'll go see it. Yeah. Man, thank y'all for joining us this week. Hey, son, you got anything going on this week that we need to promote? You want to give a shout out to?
No, nothing. Nothing by the time of airing. No, we're good.
It'll be over. It'll be over. By the time this airs, but I'll be sitting down talking to, and it'll be the first of many, hopefully, prayerfully. But I'll be sitting down talking to our young people. Which started with Church Girl is now a conversation for my one. I want my young people to know they got a village, and then two, to talk about some of the traps of their current life. So their family is not trying to decide whether or not, to have, abortion or deal with another mouth, or whether or not you don't have to face
Right.
Sexually transmitted disease because we know to be safe on the top end, or
Right.
you ain't gotta submit to smoking weed because everybody else, So
Right.
it'll be real talk. So I'm excited about that. Me and then our youth pastor Ricardo Marshall, we'll be kind of chopping it up with our young people. So I'm excited about that. So
Love it.
Other than that, let's keep each other lifted in prayer, covered in prayer. Watch out for each other. All we have is each other. Thank you again for joining us. Can't wait till next week so we can kind of dig into this Woman King. So join us again next week where we'll discuss Woman King at length. But until next week, grace and peace.